When I ask my daughter, can God do anything? She's been taught to say no. Then I ask, well, what can he do? And she answers confidently, lie. But in reality, there are several things God cannot do. For example, he cannot create a rock so big that he cannot move it. The idea of God's omnipotence isn't that he can do absolutely anything imaginable, but that he has the power to do whatever he wills or desires to do. But that doesn't mean he acts randomly or outside of himself. Lately, I've been thinking about that a little deeper. There's a sense in which God must act according to who he is. His will or desire and his nature are never at odds. In other words, God's actions flow from his character, not apart from it. He can do all things consistent with his nature, but he cannot do what would contradict who he is. He cannot lie, for example, not because he lacks power, but because he is perfect truth. God cannot not create. You see, God created not merely out of a passing desire to create, but because he is by nature creative. Creation is not an exception to his will, it is an expression of his being. In that sense, God cannot not create. There's no version of reality in which a truly creative God remains forever unexpressed. He desires to create precisely because creation aligns perfectly with his nature. That idea led me to think about the question of God's hiddenness, which atheists and agnostics often use as arguments against God's consistency. They often ask, if God exists, why doesn't he just reveal himself? I've answered that question before, and in a formal debate, I'd still argue that God has revealed himself. He's done so through creation and by impressing upon every human heart an innate awareness of him. See John 1 and Romans 1. I'd also point out that God physically revealed himself in the person of Jesus Christ. But lately I've been reflecting on this from another angle. If God acts without impediment and cannot be thwarted, if he always acts in perfect harmony with his nature, then perhaps this explains why he seems at times hidden. You see, God by nature is spirit, and that isn't a cop-out, that is just reality. God also desires to have a relationship with his creation. The God who is love doesn't just want obedience, he wants communion. You see, for a relationship to be real, it must be grounded in truth. Each person must be known for who they truly are. If God's essence is spiritual, then to know him as he truly is, we must encounter him as spirit. To reveal himself primarily as physical would be to misrepresent his nature. So, rather than hiding, God reveals himself in the only way that preserves the integrity of who he is, through creation, order, rationality, morality, truth. This should lead us to think about what Jesus told Thomas after Thomas declared, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." John 20, 28 through 29. Relationship with God isn't built on proximity or sight. It's built on mutual knowing. In that sense, faith isn't a barrier to relationship. It's the bridge that allows it to exist on the truest terms possible. It's similar in marriage. You can live in the same house and still not know your spouse. True intimacy happens when two people know and are known. When the relationship moves beyond the visible into the personal, the unseen, the heart. God desires that same kind of relationship with us. So while God's invisible nature can feel like an obstacle, like it's not always the easiest way to have a relationship, it is actually the only one that is based on reality and truth, at least at this time in history. So I will worship what I cannot see, and I will believe in what the Spirit has revealed. And this all is my explanation of why our relationship with the metaphysical is the way it is. God acts according to his nature, and that includes how he reveals himself. If you found this video helpful, please like and leave a comment. If you have not already, please hit the subscribe button. And until next time, stay shaped by reason, guided by faith, and grounded in Christ. Take it easy.